Welcome back to the county seat. We are about ready to discuss all that's been happening in land in the last month. It's been pretty significant. Joining us is Mark Ward from the Utah Association of Counties. Raise your hand there, Mark. And Commissioner Jim Matson from Kane County, Commissioner Doug Heaton from Kane County. Gentlemen, thank you for driving all the way up here to be on the show today. Let's start with RS 2477. How many years has the county been engaged in that?
Longer than I've been really involved. I've only been involved intimately for 2 years. It's been going on for probably 8 or 9 or 10 years.
It's been fairly significant as far as the amount of time. Mark, what does this do for the county? We talked about how it removed third-party claimants from actually creating the litigation. What does that mean for the county?
Well, the recent decision by the 10th Circuit makes it clear that road issues are between the property owners and not third-party advocates like environmental groups. It makes it clear that the issue is between the BLM and Kane County in that case, and that the model for the rest of the state applies. And so it's a very significant victory because it narrows the field to the proper parties who should be discussing this. The BLM owns the ground over which the road runs. The county claims the road as a right-of-way or easement. It's a property issue, and the 10th Circuit said we're going to limit this to the property owners and not to some other group who has no interest in the property.
What should counties be doing right now? Because obviously Kane County has led the charge on this. What's the advice that you would have for the other counties in the state?
Well, I think after our investment on this issue, and we've been kind of pushed at this for over 10 years, it is about access, and it is eventually about protection in one form or another that the public thinks is needed. And without that, we don't have our local cultural and economic means or ways to practice our values. And so with access, more or less assured with this kind of process under RS 2477, we're very hopeful that other counties will take a look at it as that same means. Otherwise, they'll be upwards to the, or not upwards, but at least subject to what happens, with the bureaucracies that have to administer all that stuff. And we're just trying to maintain our place on the landscape.
Do you think that going forward from here, there's a time, there's a clock ticking?
Yeah, there's two things that we need to really be aware of with regard to the clock that you talk about. There is a statute of limitations. You have to address the issue within, is it 10 years?
12 years.
12 years from the date when you know or should have known that there was a problem. Failure to do that disqualifies you from even addressing the problem at all. The other statute of limitations, it isn't a statute of limitations, but it's a factor because the date that we have to be able to have testimony on is prior to 1966, I believe. And the people who were alive who can testify to the use of those roads in 1966 are dwindling. And it's becoming a factor of even being able to find competent people who are still cognizant enough to give testimony and demonstrate that there was actually use on those roads. So those two factors are a really big deal. If you want to address those issues, you need to address them now.
I think that probably pretty well covers it. My final question to either one of the commissioners, what's Kane County going to do next?
We're going to do what we have done in the past. It's very important to us to gain access to those, to maintain those accesses and right-of-ways through those public lands as part of our transportation system. That transportation system is critical to us economically, critical to us environmentally, all of the other aspects. It's critical. If we lose that, then so much of what we enjoy as our way of life and our tourist population, the other people coming through, will lose it as well. We feel that it's critical that and it's also important that we do it through quiet title. And I don't know whether you've got time for me to expound on that or not, but from our perspective, individually, we love the BLM people who are administering these public lands. They're great folk, but from a administration point of view, there is no consistency from administration to administration. And a perfect example of that would be RS 2477 rights were obvious and existed until Secretary Babbitt decided that they didn't. And then by some arbitrary stroke of, he simply erased that right. And now, now we find ourselves in a situation of saying, does that right exist or does it not? And because of the unstable nature of the trend in administration to administration, the only way to set that in stone is to do it through the court system, and then it's set.
That actually moves us to the next topic, is the Wildlands Initiative, because as the story indicated, Governor Herbert was very concerned about the lack of consistency, and he says consistency kills planning, it kills industry. So that consistency is a problem all the way across the board?
In 2009, Washington County ran a bill in Congress with the support of all of our delegation to designate certain limited lands in Washington County as wilderness on the expectation that all of the other proposed wilderness would be released. Well, the problem with the Salazar order that came out on December 23rd is it takes all those lands that we thought were released and puts them back into a default position of wilderness. And so it really undermines the credibility of the county-by-county wilderness process. And we've got to get some clarification from BLM and possibly from Congress, or it's going to be very hard to go forward, because like Doug said, you don't know what's going to happen from one administration to the next, and what happened in Washington County is a prime example of that. I could go on and on about it.
Now, the public perception is generally, at least along the Wasatch Front, is that Kane County, and I'm going to pick on you guys for a second, Kane County is anti-wilderness. Do you feel that there's no more room for wilderness designations across the state?
You know, I think that you can look at it from the standpoint of 88% of our Kane County is under federal administration. Mm-hmm. And after the gift of 1996, the Grand Staircase Escalade National Monument, there's a lot of area there that's already been, you know, so included. There are other areas that have been in wilderness study areas. Let me also say that I think it's really important to realize that our backs are against the wall. When you look at that ownership and you look at the corridors and you look at the communities and where they're located, we're the ones on reservations.
Chad, what a lot of people in the Wasatch Front don't realize is that the Grand Staircase Monument designation in '96 really did put Kane County's back against the wall, because it was unprecedented what happened there, in that dozens, if not hundreds, of roads were closed, legitimate roads, and it happened in Garfield County too. People sometimes wonder, why is Kane County in the controversy? They were literally pushed into it by the monument designation.
Again, as always happens here, our time goes up far too quickly. So we are going to take a break. We'll come back for closing comments in just a minute.